Think you know everything about Bayside High's most famous students? From a secret drug addiction that wasn't caffeine pills to a cast member who was only 11 years old during filming, the beloved 90s sitcom hides some absolutely wild secrets behind its squeaky-clean Saturday morning image. Producer Peter Engel banned swearing on set, but that didn't stop the teenage cast from living it up off-camera in ways that would make Zack Morris blush. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about. Saved by the Bell, 1989. Fact 1. Jessie was originally addicted to speed, not caffeine pills. One of the most memorable episodes in Saved by the Bell history features Jessie Spano having a dramatic breakdown while singing, "I'm so excited! I'm so excited! I'm so scared!" But what viewers never knew is that this iconic scene was originally written to be much darker and more serious than what actually aired on Saturday morning television. Executive producer Peter Engel revealed in his memoir that when he and writer Tom Tenowich first created the episode called Jessie's Song, they intended for Jessie to be addicted to actual amphetamines, commonly known as speed. The storyline was meant to explore the intense pressure that high-achieving students face and how some turn to dangerous stimulants to keep up with their demanding schedules. Engel wanted the show to tackle real issues that teenagers were dealing with, and amphetamine abuse was a genuine concern in schools during the late 1980s and early 1990s. However, when the script reached NBC's Standards and Practices Department, which acts as the network's censorship board, executives immediately rejected the idea. They told Engel that featuring hard drugs like speed was far too serious and inappropriate for a Saturday morning show aimed at children and young teenagers. The department insisted that if the episode was going to air, all references to amphetamines had to be completely removed from the script. Faced with this ultimatum, Engel and his writing team had to find a compromise. They decided to change Jessie's addiction from speed to over-the-counter caffeine pills, which seemed harmless enough to satisfy the network's censors. Interestingly, despite this major change to the central plot device, the writers made no other alterations to Jessie's behavior, reactions, or the intensity of her breakdown scene. This explains why Elizabeth Berkley's performance seems so dramatically over the top for someone supposedly just taking caffeine pills. She was still acting out the effects of a much more serious drug addiction, even though the props and dialogue had been sanitized for television. Fact 2. Dustin Diamond was only 11 when cast. When producer Peter Engel was casting the role of Samuel Screech Powers for Saved by the Bell, he made a major oversight that would have lasting consequences for the show's dynamics. Engel accidentally hired Dustin Diamond without properly checking his real age, not realizing that the young actor was significantly younger than the rest of the cast members who were being hired to play high school students. Diamond was born on January 7, 1977, which means he was only 11 years old when filming began for the show's predecessor, Good Morning Miss Bliss, and just 12 when Saved by the Bell premiered in August of 1989. Meanwhile, his co-stars Mark-Paul Gosselaar, Tiffany Thiessen, Mario Lopez, Elizabeth Berkley, and Lark Voorhees were all between 14 and 16 years old when the show started. This 3-year age gap might not seem like much to adults, but during the teenage years, it represents a massive difference in maturity, life experience, and social development. Engel later admitted that if he had known Diamond's true age during the casting process, he probably would not have hired him for the role. The producer revealed that he misread Diamond's headshot information, which led to the casting mistake that would define the show's entire run. This age difference became even more pronounced as the series continued, creating an unusual dynamic where Diamond was essentially a middle school student working alongside high school-aged actors who were dealing with typical teenage experiences like dating, driving, and preparing for college. The significant age gap also contributed to some of the social isolation that Diamond experienced on set, as his co-stars naturally gravitated toward each other for friendships and romantic relationships, while he remained on the outside due to his much younger age. Mark-Paul Gosselaar later acknowledged this reality, explaining that when you're 17 and someone else is 14, it feels like light years of difference, and that gap only became more apparent as they all grew older together during the show's 4-season run. Fact 3. Mark-Paul Gosselaar bleached his hair every 2 weeks. Mark-Paul Gosselaar's signature blonde hair as Zack Morris became one of the most recognizable looks on 1990s television, but maintaining that perfect surfer boy appearance required a grueling routine that most fans never realized was happening behind the scenes. The truth is that Gosselaar is naturally a brunette, and he had to undergo a complete hair bleaching process every 2 weeks throughout the entire 4-season run of Saved by the Bell to keep Zack's iconic blonde locks looking fresh and consistent. This wasn't just a simple touch-up or minor color adjustment that many actors might need between filming sessions. Gosselaar had to sit through a full bleaching treatment before every single episode, which meant exposing his hair to harsh chemicals dozens of times over the course of the show's production. The process was necessary because his natural dark brown hair would start showing through at the roots relatively quickly, and the show's producers demanded that Zack's appearance remain perfectly consistent from episode to episode. The constant chemical processing took a serious toll on Gosselaar's hair health and proved to be much more difficult to reverse than anyone had anticipated when the show first started. After Saved by the Bell ended in 1993, Gosselaar discovered that getting back to his natural brunette color was going to be a long and complicated process. He later told People magazine that returning to his original hair color took months of careful treatment and patience, saying, "Getting back to my natural color took a while." The dedication required for this transformation shows just how committed the young cast was to maintaining their characters' distinctive looks, even when it meant subjecting themselves to potentially damaging beauty routines. Gosselaar's willingness to repeatedly bleach his hair every 2 weeks for 4 years demonstrates the level of professionalism and sacrifice that went into creating the polished, consistent appearance that made Saved by the Bell such a visually memorable show for its target audience of teenagers and young adults. Fact 4. The cast had an incestuous dating circle. The romantic relationships that viewers saw playing out between characters on Saved by the Bell were actually mirroring real-life drama that was happening behind the cameras, creating a complex web of teenage romance that sometimes made filming quite complicated. Mark-Paul Gosselaar later admitted in a 2009 interview with People magazine that the cast's dating lives were surprisingly intertwined, describing the situation by saying, "All of us dated at one point or another. It was incestuous." Gosselaar wasn't exaggerating when he used that strong word to describe their romantic entanglements. He actually dated all 3 of his female co-stars at different times during the show's 4-season run, which created some seriously awkward moments when those relationships ended, but everyone still had to work together every day. His most serious relationship was with Lark Voorhees, who played Lisa Turtle, and they dated for 3 years while filming the show. He also had romantic relationships with both Tiffany Thiessen, who played Kelly Kapowski, and Elizabeth Berkley, who played Jessie Spano. The off-screen romantic drama didn't stop there, as Mario Lopez also dated Tiffany Thiessen during production, adding another layer of complexity to the already tangled situation. When these young relationships inevitably hit rough patches or ended completely, the cast had to continue showing up to work and pretending to be best friends on camera, which wasn't always easy to pull off convincingly. Gosselaar described how these romantic complications would sometimes create real tension on set, explaining that sometimes the girls would gang up on the guys, Tiffany and Elizabeth would hate me, and then they'd hate Lark because Lark was talking to me, and Mario was supposed to side with someone. This meant that producer Peter Engel often found himself playing the role of both television producer and relationship counselor, trying to keep the peace among his young cast members while still maintaining the show's production schedule and ensuring that their personal drama didn't spill over into their professional performances. Fact 5. The show was almost called When the Bell Rings. The iconic title, Saved by the Bell, that became synonymous with 1990s teen television almost never happened, and the name that millions of fans know and love today, was actually the result of a major disagreement between the show's creator and the network president. When producer Peter Engel was developing the series after NBC picked up the rights from Disney Channel, he had his heart set on calling the show When the Bell Rings, which he felt was a more straightforward and appropriate title for a high school comedy. Engel's original title made logical sense because it directly referenced the school bell that would ring at the end of class periods, signaling freedom for students and serving as a natural transition point for the show's various storylines. The phrase, "when the bell rings," also captured the idea of students being released from their academic responsibilities and free to get into the kind of lighthearted trouble that would drive the show's comedy. However, during a crucial meeting between Engel, NBC president Brandon Tartikoff, and senior producer Tom Tenowich, the show's fate took an unexpected turn when Tenowich suggested the alternative title, Saved by the Bell. Tartikoff immediately fell in love with this suggestion, finding it much more catchy and memorable than Engel's preferred option. The NBC executive felt that Saved by the Bell had a more dynamic sound and implied that the characters would be rescued from various predicaments by fortunate timing, which aligned perfectly with the show's comedic premise. Despite Tartikoff's enthusiasm, Engel absolutely hated the proposed title and fought against it during the meeting. He felt that Saved by the Bell was too gimmicky and didn't accurately represent the tone he wanted to establish for the series. However, since Tartikoff was the one making the final decisions at NBC, his preference ultimately won out, and Saved by the Bell became the official title. This disagreement turned out to be one of the most important creative decisions in the show's history, as the catchy title helped make it instantly recognizable and memorable for generations of viewers. Fact 6. Lisa Turtle was supposed to be a Jewish princess. The character of Lisa Turtle that fans came to know and love was completely different from what the show's creators originally had in mind, and her entire background was rewritten after an unexpected audition changed everything. When producer Peter Engel was initially developing the cast for Saved by the Bell, Lisa Turtle was conceived as a wealthy Jewish girl from Long Island who embodied the classic Jewish American princess stereotype that was common in television during the late 1980s. The original version of Lisa was designed to be a spoiled, materialistic character who came from a privileged background and was obsessed with shopping, fashion, and showing off her family's wealth. This characterization would have made her the typical rich girl archetype that appeared in many teen shows of the era, focusing on her privileged upbringing and somewhat superficial personality as sources of both comedy and conflict with the other characters. However, when Lark Voorhees walked into Peter Engel's office to audition for the role, everything changed in an instant. Engel was immediately struck by Voorhees' natural charisma, talent, and screen presence, and he knew right away that she was perfect for the show, even though she didn't match the physical description or background that had been written for the Lisa Turtle character. Rather than let this casting opportunity slip away, Engel made the bold decision to completely rewrite the character to fit Voorhees' strengths and background. This meant throwing out the entire Jewish American princess concept and creating a new version of Lisa Turtle that would showcase Voorhees' abilities while still maintaining the character's fashion-forward personality, love of shopping. The producers kept Lisa's interest in style and trends, which had been central to the original character concept, but removed all the cultural and geographical specifics that had tied her to Long Island and Jewish heritage. This creative flexibility allowed Voorhees to bring her own interpretation to the role and helped create one of the most memorable characters in the show's history, proving that sometimes the best casting decisions happen when producers are willing to adapt their original vision to fit the right actor. Fact 7. Real magician Ed Alonzo was fired for being too childish. Ed Alonzo, who played Max the magician and owner of the Max restaurant, was a real professional magician who brought genuine magic skills to the show, but his character disappeared after just one season because producers realized that his approach wasn't connecting with their target audience. Max was originally designed to be a wise mentor figure who would offer the teenage characters advice about serious issues like drugs, pollution, and other social problems, delivering these life lessons through entertaining magic tricks that were meant to reinforce his points and make the messages more memorable. The concept seemed perfect on paper, especially since Alonzo was an accomplished magician in real life who had been performing at the famous Magic Castle in Hollywood since he was a teenager. His authentic magic skills added genuine entertainment value to the show, and the character of Max was intended to serve as a bridge between the lighthearted comedy and the more serious, very special episode, moments that were common in teen television during the late 1980s and early 1990s. However, the producers quickly discovered that Saved by the Bell's audience wasn't made up of young children who would appreciate a goofy adult magician teaching them important lessons. Instead, the show was attracting teenagers who wanted to see stories about their own experiences with dating, school, and growing up, rather than being lectured by an adult character who seemed more suited to a children's program than a teen comedy. Producer Peter Engel explained that the decision to remove Max came down to understanding their audience better, saying that it became apparent that we were appealing to the teens. We didn't need that type. The character's educational approach and magical gimmicks felt out of place in a show that was evolving to focus more on the relationships and adventures of the teenage characters themselves. After appearing in about 20 episodes during the first season, Max made only one brief guest appearance in Season 2 before disappearing completely, allowing the show to concentrate entirely on the high school students and their world, without the interruption of adult-oriented life lessons disguised as entertainment. Fact 8. The Hawaiian movie was mostly filmed in Santa Monica. When NBC approved the production of the feature-length television movie Saved by the Bell, Hawaiian Style in 1992, viewers expected to see the Bayside gang enjoying a genuine tropical vacation in the beautiful Hawaiian Islands. However, the reality behind the scenes was quite different, as budget constraints forced the production team to get creative with their filming locations and rely heavily on movie magic to create the illusion of a Hawaiian paradise. The truth is that most of the scenes that appeared to take place in Hawaii were actually filmed much closer to home on the beaches of Santa Monica, California. Producer Peter Engel and director Don Barnhart had to make some tough decisions about which scenes absolutely required authentic Hawaiian locations, and which ones could be convincingly faked using California beaches with some clever camera work and editing tricks. The production team decided that only the shots that could not easily be faked would justify the expense and logistical complications of flying the entire cast and crew to Hawaii. This meant that establishing shots of famous Hawaiian landmarks, certain scenic backgrounds, and specific location-dependent scenes were filmed on the islands, while the majority of the character interactions, dialogue scenes, and general beach activities were shot on familiar California coastlines that could pass for tropical locations with the right lighting and camera angles. Even with this cost-cutting approach, The Hawaiian portion of the filming schedule turned out to be much more complex and expensive than anyone had anticipated. After Engel and Barnhart spent time scouting locations in Hawaii, they discovered that the logistics of shooting there were incredibly challenging and time-consuming, even for the limited scenes they had planned to film on the islands. To ensure the safety of the young cast during the beach scenes, the production hired real-life Hawaiian lifeguards to work as extras and provide professional supervision whenever the actors were in or near the water. This attention to safety was crucial, since the cast members were still teenagers who needed proper supervision while filming potentially dangerous beach and water scenes in an unfamiliar location far from their families and regular support systems. Fact 9. Jessie's caffeine pills were actually Red Hot's candy. During the filming of the infamous Jessie's Song episode, where Elizabeth Berkley's character has a dramatic breakdown over her caffeine pill addiction, the props department had to find a safe way for the actress to handle and potentially consume what appeared to be medication on camera. Rather than using actual caffeine pills or even realistic-looking fake pills that might have been difficult to work with during multiple takes, the creative team came up with a surprisingly simple and sweet solution: the caffeine pills that Jessie Spano desperately clutches and appears to take throughout the episode were actually Red Hot cinnamon candy, the small, spicy red candies that have been a popular American treat for decades. This choice was both practical and safe, since the props department knew that Berkley might need to put the pills in her mouth during filming, and Red Hot's provided a harmless option that wouldn't cause any health concerns if accidentally swallowed during the intense emotional scenes. The candy substitution also worked perfectly from a visual standpoint, since Red Hots are small, round, and bright red, which made them easily visible to television cameras and clearly distinguishable as pills to viewers watching at home. The distinctive color helped emphasize the dramatic moments when Jessie would reach for her medication or frantically search through her belongings to find her supply, making the pills an important visual element in telling the story of her addiction. Using Red Hots instead of realistic prop pills also allowed for easier handling during the multiple takes that were required to capture Berkley's emotionally intense performance. Since the candy was lightweight and wouldn't break or crumble if dropped, the props team didn't have to worry about replacing damaged pills between takes or dealing with small pieces scattered around the set during the dramatic scenes where Jessie loses control. This behind-the-scenes detail adds an interesting layer to one of the most memorable and frequently referenced episodes in Saved by the Bell history, showing how even the smallest production decisions can contribute to creating iconic television moments that viewers remember and discuss for decades after the original broadcast. Fact 10. Tori Scott was named after Tori Spelling. When Saved by the Bell faced a major casting crisis during its 4th season after both Tiffany Thiessen and Elizabeth Berkley decided to leave the show to pursue other opportunities, the producers had to quickly create a new female character to fill the gap and maintain the show's ensemble dynamic. The character they developed was Tori Scott, a tough biker girl who would serve as both a love interest for Zack and a completely different type of female character than the show had featured before. But her name came from an unexpected source within Hollywood's entertainment industry. Tori Scott was directly named after Tori Spelling, the daughter of mega-producer Aaron Spelling, who was one of the most powerful and influential figures in television during the 1980s and 1990s. Aaron Spelling was responsible for creating massive hit shows like Dynasty, The Love Boat, and Fantasy Island, making him a household name in the entertainment business and giving his family significant connections throughout Hollywood. The naming choice becomes even more interesting when you realize that Tori Spelling herself had already appeared on Saved by the Bell in a guest role during an earlier season, playing a character named Violet who served as a love interest for Screech during a memorable episode. In that appearance, Spelling played a nerdy, awkward character who was perfectly matched to Dustin Diamond's Screech, and the episode was notable for featuring Diamond's first on-screen kiss, which was also his first kiss in real life since he was still quite young during filming. This created a unique situation where the show featured both a character named after Tori Spelling and an actual appearance by Tori Spelling herself, though most viewers probably never made the connection between the real person and the character's name. The decision to honor Aaron Spelling's daughter in this way likely reflected the respect and recognition that the television industry had for her father's enormous contributions to entertainment, while also serving as a subtle nod to the interconnected nature of Hollywood's creative community during that era. Fact 11. The theme song violated the producer's direct orders. The catchy theme song that millions of fans can still sing along to today almost never happened because producer Peter Engel was absolutely determined to prevent the show's title from appearing anywhere in the opening music. Since Engel had already lost the battle over the show's name and was forced to accept Saved by the Bell instead of his preferred title, When the Bell Rings, he was determined to maintain some control over how the series presented itself to audiences. Engel gave explicit and very clear instructions to his entire team of composers, telling them in no uncertain terms that he would not accept any theme song that referenced the title Saved by the Bell in any way. He wanted the opening music to focus on the characters, the school setting, or the general feeling of teenage life, but he absolutely refused to allow the phrase that he disliked so much to be sung or referenced in the theme song that viewers would hear at the beginning of every single episode. The group of composers initially followed Engel's orders and created several different theme song options that avoided mentioning the show's title. But when Engel listened to these first attempts, he found them disappointing and forgettable. The songs were technically competent and followed his instructions perfectly, but they lacked the energy, catchiness, and memorable quality that a successful television theme song needed to grab viewers' attention and stick in their minds. After hearing these lackluster results, composer Scott Gale decided to take a major risk and completely ignore Engel's direct orders by creating a theme song that not only mentioned the show's title, but actually built the entire song around the phrase "Saved by the Bell." Gale believed that embracing the title rather than avoiding it would create a much stronger and more memorable opening theme, even though he knew he was directly defying the producer's explicit instructions. When Engel heard Gale's rebellious creation, he immediately recognized that it was exactly what the show needed, despite his personal feelings about the title. The song was so catchy, energetic, and perfect for the show's tone that Engel had to admit defeat and accept that sometimes the best creative decisions come from breaking the rules rather than following them. Fact 12. Slater was originally supposed to be Italian. The character of AC, Slater that Mario Lopez brought to life on Saved by the Bell, was completely different from what the show's creators originally had in mind when they were developing the athletic new transfer student who would join the Bayside High gang. Executive producer Peter Engel revealed that Slater was initially conceived as an Italian-American character who embodied a very specific type of tough, street-smart teenager that was popular in television and movies during the late 1980s. The original version of Slater was written as a street kid who was an army brat, according to Engel's description in interviews years later. This character background would have given him a grittier, more urban edge that reflected his Italian-American heritage and his experience moving from military base to military base as his father served in different locations around the world. The army brat aspect of his background was designed to explain why he was transferring to Bayside High as a new student, while his Italian-American street kid persona would have provided a contrast to the more privileged, suburban characters who were already part of the show's core group. However, when the casting directors began their search for an actor who could bring this specific character to life, they ran into unexpected difficulties finding someone who fit both the physical requirements and the acting abilities needed for the role. The casting process dragged on longer than expected, and the producers became increasingly concerned that they wouldn't be able to find the right person to play this version of Slater before filming needed to begin. When Mario Lopez auditioned for the role, the producers immediately recognized that he had the charisma, athletic ability, and acting skills that the character needed, but his background didn't match the Italian-American street kid they had originally envisioned. Rather than continue their search for an actor who fit their original concept, the creative team made the smart decision to rewrite the character's ethnicity and background to match Lopez's own Hispanic heritage. This change allowed them to cast the best actor for the role, while also bringing authentic representation to the show, and Lopez's natural charm and athletic abilities made Slater one of the most popular characters throughout the series' entire run. Fact 13. The cast made really bad syndication deals. The massive success of Saved by the Bell in syndication, where it has been airing continuously on various networks for over 3 decades, has generated millions of dollars in revenue, but the young actors who made the show famous received very little financial benefit from this ongoing goldmine. Mark-Paul Gosselaar later admitted in a candid appearance on Watch What Happens Live that the cast made really bad deals when they signed their original contracts, a mistake that would cost them significant money for years to come. The problem stemmed from the fact that Saved by the Bell was breaking new ground as one of the first non-animated series to become a massive hit on Saturday morning television. Before the show's success, Saturday morning programming was dominated by cartoons and educational shows, so there was no established precedent for how to structure contracts for young actors appearing in live-action teen comedies that might have long-term syndication potential. Because the cast members were teenagers with little to no experience in the entertainment industry, they didn't have the knowledge or sophisticated representation needed to negotiate contracts that would protect their future financial interests. The actors and their families were focused on the immediate opportunity of appearing on a network television show, and they likely didn't fully understand how valuable the show could become in reruns if it proved to be popular with audiences. The entertainment industry itself was also still figuring out how to handle syndication deals for this new type of programming, which meant that even experienced agents and lawyers might not have anticipated just how profitable Saved by the Bell would become in reruns. The show's unique position as a breakthrough Saturday morning hit meant that everyone involved was essentially making educated guesses about its long-term value. As a result, when Saved by the Bell became a syndication phenomenon that continues to air on multiple networks and streaming platforms decades after its original run, the cast members discovered that their original contracts gave them very little ongoing compensation for these reruns. While the show's creators, producers, and network continued to profit from its enduring popularity, the actors who brought the beloved characters to life receive minimal financial benefit from the show's continued success. Fact 14. Kelly and Tori never appeared in the same episode. One of the most unusual aspects of Saved by the Bell's 4th season involves a strange production quirk that created a bizarre situation where 2 major female characters who both dated Zack Morris never actually met on screen, despite being part of the same show during the same time period. Kelly Kapowski, played by Tiffany Thiessen, and Tori Scott, played by Leanna Creel, were filmed completely separately and never shared a single scene together, creating an odd parallel universe effect that most viewers probably never noticed. This strange situation came about because of the complicated circumstances surrounding the show's unexpected renewal for additional episodes after what was supposed to be the series finale. NBC had originally planned to end Saved by the Bell with the graduation episode, but then decided to order 11 more episodes to extend the show's run. However, by the time this decision was made, both Tiffany Thiessen and Elizabeth Berkley had already committed to other projects and were no longer available to continue with the series. The producers found themselves in a difficult position because they needed to create new episodes featuring the remaining cast members, but they also had Thiessen contractually obligated to appear in the graduation episode that had already been filmed. To solve this problem, they decided to create the Tori Scott character as a replacement for the missing female characters. But the filming schedules meant that Thiessen and Creel could never be on set at the same time. This scheduling conflict resulted in a truly bizarre situation where the show essentially created two different versions of its fourth season. Some episodes featured Kelly, Jessie, and the original gang, while other episodes featured Tori, Lisa, and the remaining characters. But these two groups of episodes existed in completely separate continuities that never acknowledged each other. The production team handled this unusual situation by treating Kelly and Tori as if they existed in alternate timelines, with each character serving as Zack's love interest in their respective episodes, without any reference to the other person's existence. Fans who watched the episodes as they originally aired would have seen Zack dating two different girls in what appeared to be the same time period, creating a confusing narrative that was never properly explained within the show itself. Fact 15. Mr. Belding was completely rewritten between shows. The lovable, goofy principal Mr. Richard Belding that fans remember from Saved by the Bell was actually a completely different character from the original version that appeared in the show's predecessor, Good Morning, Miss Bliss, representing one of the most dramatic character transformations in television history. When the Disney Channel series was retooled for NBC, the producers didn't just change the setting and focus of the show, they completely reimagined what the principal character should be like, and even recast the role with a different actor. In the original Good Morning, Miss Bliss series that aired from 1987 to 1989, the principal was named Mr. Gerald Belding and was portrayed as a much older, serious, and humorless authority figure who fit the traditional stereotype of a strict school administrator. This version of the character was played by character actor Oliver Clark in the 1987 pilot episode, and he was written to be the kind of no-nonsense principal that students would genuinely fear and respect rather than befriend or joke around with. When NBC acquired the rights to the show and decided to transform it into Saved by the Bell, the producers realized that the serious, authoritarian version of Mr. Belding didn't fit the lighter, more comedic tone they wanted to achieve with their new teen-focused series. They needed a principal character who could serve as both an authority figure and a source of comic relief. Someone who could interact with the teenage characters in a more playful and approachable way. The transformation involved changing the character's first name from Gerald to Richard and completely rewriting his personality to make him significantly younger, more energetic, and much more prone to getting involved in the students' schemes and adventures. Dennis Haskins was cast in this reimagined version of the role, and he brought a completely different energy and sense of humor to the character that made Mr. Belding feel like a big kid himself rather than a stern adult. This dramatic character overhaul was so successful that Haskins' version of Mr. Belding became one of the most memorable and beloved characters in the entire Saved by the Bell universe, appearing in multiple spin-offs and remaining with the franchise for years after the original series ended.